Welcome to Harmonic Philosophy. If you're diving deep with us into the fascinating world of spirituality and philosophy, we have a small favor to ask. Help us reach more like-minded individuals like yourself by hitting that subscribe button below. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you're not just joining our community, you're helping us grow and bring even more content your way. Don't forget to tap the notification bell too, so you never miss out on our latest videos. Together, let's build a community where knowledge, inspiration, and connection flourish. Now let's get into today's video. Have you ever wondered if you're really in control of your own thoughts and decisions? It's a tantalizing question to ponder, isn't it? We all like to believe that we're the masters of our own minds, that our thoughts and choices are exclusively ours. But imagine for a moment an invisible puppeteer pulling the strings of your mind, subtly influencing your thoughts and decisions without you even realizing it. This puppeteer is not some external entity, but rather, it's within us. It's the cognitive biases and mind traps that exist in our brains, silently altering our perceptions and judgments. They are the unconscious processes that can sway our thoughts and decisions, often leading us astray without our knowledge. It's a fascinating yet somewhat unsettling reality to comprehend. But fear not, for knowledge is power. Let's dive into the mysterious world of cognitive biases, shall we? Let's ponder over confirmation bias for a moment. Imagine you're a firm believer in a particular political ideology. Now, picture yourself scrolling through your social media feed. You come across a news article that aligns perfectly with your political beliefs. You read it, you share it, and it reinforces your conviction. However, a few swipes later, you find another article. This one presents a viewpoint that challenges your ideology. What do? Most likely you dismiss it, maybe even label it as fake news. This, dear listeners, is a classic example of a cognitive trap known as the confirmation bias. Let's delve a little deeper into this. The confirmation bias is a type of cognitive bias that compels us to give more importance to information that supports our pre-existing beliefs or values, and at the same time, disregard or downplay information that contradicts them. We can see this bias at play in many realms of life, but it's particularly pronounced in politics. Take the case of the 2016 Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom, for instance. Each side, Leave and Remain, had its passionate advocates. These advocates, in turn, were more likely to consume and share news that supported their stance, while disregarding information that didn't. This isn't to say that one side was right and the other wrong. Instead, it's about understanding how our minds work. When we're faced with complex issues, our brains naturally seek out simplicity and coherence. We want our world to make sense, and confirmation bias helps us maintain that sense of order, even if it means ignoring contrary evidence. But there's a downside. Confirmation bias can lead us to make decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information. It can keep us stuck in echo chambers where our beliefs are never challenged. It can prevent us from seeing the full picture, from understanding different perspectives, and from growing as individuals. This is what we call the confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. As we journey through the labyrinth of our minds, let's remember to question, to challenge, and to seek out diverse viewpoints. After all, the mind is a fascinating place, but it's also full of traps. Remember your favorite celebrity? We often think they can do no wrong. This is the perfect starting point to understand the halo effect, a psychological bias where our overall impression of someone influences how we perceive their individual characteristics. Let's take a journey into the world of celebrities, where the halo effect is often on full display. Imagine your favorite actor or singer. They are admired for their talent and charisma, and perhaps you're even captivated by their good looks. These positive qualities create a halo around them, a glow that illuminates everything they do. When this happens, we tend to overlook their flaws and shortcomings. Their mistakes are quickly forgiven, and their faults are easily dismissed. Why? Because their halo blinds us. We judge their character based on the overall positive impression they've left on us, ignoring the negative aspects that might contradict this image. Take, for example, a celebrity known for their philanthropy. Their charitable acts and public service create a halo of goodwill. If they were to slip up, say, caught in a scandal or controversy, their fans might be quick to defend them. The halo effect convinces us that because they've done so much good, they must be inherently good. and thus their mistakes are just anomalies. This is how the halo effect works, subtly influencing our perceptions and judgments. It's not just limited to celebrities, though. It extends to our everyday interactions too. We might perceive a colleague as more competent simply because they dress well, or a friend as more trustworthy because they're charismatic. The halo effect is a silent puppeteer, pulling the strings of our judgments and opinions from behind the scenes. It's a testament to the power of first impressions and the strength of our cognitive biases. It's a reminder that our perceptions are not always as objective as we think they are. And that, my friends, is the halo effect, where we judge someone's character based on our overall impression of them. The next time you find yourself idolizing someone, remember to take off their halo and see them for who they truly are. Ever wondered why the first price you see in a negotiation seems to stick in your mind? Let's dive into that phenomenon, shall we? Imagine you're at a local market, eager to buy a beautiful handcrafted vase. You approach the counter and the seller quotes a price. Let's say it's £50. Now, even if you haggle and get the price down to £35, that initial figure of £50 is likely to remain lodged in your mind. It becomes a reference point, a mental anchor, that informs your perception of the final negotiated price. This, dear listener, is a classic example of the anchoring bias. It's a cognitive quirk that causes us to rely heavily, often too heavily, on the first piece of information we encounter, the anchor. This anchor then influences all subsequent judgments and decisions. And it's not just in haggling at markets or negotiating car prices. The anchoring bias affects us in myriad ways, often without us even realizing it. For instance, consider the last time you dined at a restaurant. The first price you saw on that menu likely set the tone for what you considered reasonable to spend on your meal. Even in the realm of complex decision-making, like forecasting weather or estimating the value of a company, the anchoring bias holds sway. The first piece of data or information we come across can profoundly influence our subsequent analysis and conclusions. The anchoring bias is also a favorite tool of marketers and salespeople. They know that by setting a high initial price, they can make subsequent discounts seem more attractive. So, the next time you're out shopping and see that reduced from price tag, remember, it might just be the anchoring bias at play. In essence, the anchoring bias is a testament to the power of first impressions. It reveals how our minds, in their quest for efficiency, can sometimes oversimplify the world, giving disproportionate weight to the first information we receive. So the next time you find yourself swayed by that first price, that initial forecast or that opening argument, take a moment to question it. You might just be under the influence of the anchoring bias. This is the anchoring bias, where our minds give disproportionate weight to the first information we receive. Ever heard the phrase, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger"? A sentiment often echoed in the world of entrepreneurship. It might not be as universal as we believe. Let's take a look at a classic case of survivorship bias, a cognitive trap that can cloud our judgment and decision-making. Consider the story of Jane, a wildly successful entrepreneur. She dropped out of college, took a massive risk by investing her life savings into a startup, and after years of tireless work, her business exploded. Today, she's a billionaire, a shining beacon of entrepreneurial success. Now, those looking to follow in Jane's footsteps might think, if Jane did it, so can I. They see Jane's success, her triumph over adversity, and they believe that they too can replicate her journey. But here's where the survivorship bias rears its deceptive head. What this perspective fails to consider are the countless others who followed a similar path as Jane but didn't make it. Those who also dropped out of college, invested their life savings, and worked tirelessly, but ultimately, their ventures failed. These stories aren't as widely shared or celebrated. They don't make the headlines or inspire the motivational speeches. Yet they are integral to understanding the full picture. The survivorship bias has us focusing solely on successful outcomes, like Jane's. It blinds us to the numerous failures that happened along the way, the majority who didn't survive the journey. It creates an illusion of a path to success that's not as clear-cut or guaranteed as it seems. So, when you hear stories like Jane's, remember to consider the unseen, the failed ventures, the bankrupt entrepreneurs, the dreamers whose dreams didn't quite take flight. Their stories are just as important, if not more so, in understanding the true nature of success. That's the survivorship bias, where we only consider the successful and ignore the failures. Ever thought, "I knew it all along," after something happened? This is a question that often lingers in our minds after a significant event has occurred. It's a common feeling, but in truth, it's a demonstration of a cognitive bias known as the hindsight bias. To illustrate, let's journey back to a historical event. Picture the year 1969. The Apollo 11 mission is set to land the first humans on the moon. The world watches with bated breath. The mission is a success. Now fast forward to today, how many of us would say, "I knew they would make it"? But did we really know, or is our memory playing tricks on us? This is where the hindsight bias comes into play. It's a psychological phenomenon that allows us to believe we predicted or expected an outcome only after it has occurred. Our minds, in an attempt to create a seamless narrative of events, often misremember our initial predictions to match the actual outcome. This distorts our perception of reality, making us believe that we knew it all along. In the context of the moon landing, many of us today might say we always knew it would be a success. But back in 1969, the outcome was anything but certain. The mission faced numerous challenges and risks. The truth is, we didn't know it all along. Our minds have simply rewritten the past to fit the present. The hindsight bias isn't just confined to historical events. It's at play in our everyday lives, from sports predictions to financial investments. It's a mental shortcut our minds use to make sense of the world around us. But it can also lead us to overestimate our own predictive abilities and make poor decisions based on this false confidence. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I knew it all along," take a moment to question that thought. Was it a genuine prediction or the work of the hindsight bias? Remember, it's always easier to connect the dots looking backward than forward. This is hindsight bias, a tricky little mind trap that makes us believe we predicted the outcome. So, how many of these cognitive biases and mind traps did you recognize in your own thinking? We've embarked on a fascinating journey, delving deep into the labyrinth of our minds, exploring its corners, its crevices, and shining a light on the unseen puppeteers that subtly steer our thoughts and decisions. From the deceptive allure of the confirmation bias, where we seek out information that supports our pre-existing beliefs, to the halo effect that paints an overly rosy picture of people or things we admire. We've navigated the murky waters of the anchoring bias, where we tend to rely heavily on the first piece of information we encounter. We've also touched upon the survivorship bias, which blinds us from the failures that didn't make it to the finish line, skewing our understanding of success and chance. And we've ventured into the territory of the hindsight bias, where we falsely believe that we could have predicted an event after it has occurred. Each of these cognitive biases and mind traps have one thing in common. They operate in the shadows, subtly influencing us without our conscious awareness. They shape our perceptions, our decisions, and ultimately, our lives. But now, we've brought them into the light. We've named them, described them, and hopefully, made them a little less mysterious. The importance of being aware of these processes in our day-to-day decision-making cannot be overstated. They can impact everything from the relationships we form, the careers we choose, to the risks we take. Recognizing these biases and mind traps is the first step towards overcoming them. Knowledge is power, and with this newfound understanding, we can begin to question, to learn, and to think more consciously. With each decision we make, with each belief we hold, let's pause, reflect, and consider the invisible puppeteers that might be at play. Let's strive to make our thinking, our decision-making, more deliberate, more conscious, more unbiased. Remember, the first step to overcoming these mind traps is recognizing them. Keep questioning, keep learning, and most importantly, keep thinking consciously.